Hello, friends. This is Adnan Qaiser, your host, with another episode of our discussion on Islamic radicalism, in which we are trying to examine what constitutes religious terrorism. This is part 6 of our discussion, and segment B, in which we keep determining the root causes of religious terrorism. So those of you who have listened to the previous segment, the segment A, in which we had discussed 3 root causes, so I'll connect with the 4th one in this segment. So sit back and listen. So the 4th root cause, to me, could be laid at the doorsteps of the West's migrant policy towards Muslim refugees, seeing Islamic culture and religious practices conflicting with the West's societal liberalization and civilizational outlook. The demonstrated prejudices keep causing resentment among the Muslim population all over the globe, especially the immigrant diaspora from the Muslim countries, Europe's and Western countries' discriminating policies, outlook, and approach towards the Muslim refugees and asylum seekers, as well as the economic migrants, have also played a significant role in alienating and antagonizing the marginalized Muslim immigrant community in those Western countries. While racism cannot be discounted, ladies and gentlemen, denying the immigrants equal opportunity rights and several advancement opportunities owing to their lack of skills and education, besides denying them to practice their faith openly and freely, and granting them permission to wear their religious attire at will, have further caused a lot of anger, bitterness, and resentment among the migrants who try to reach the Western shores at great perils to their lives. They also put the lives of their loved ones, their children, their families in harm's way. And while undertaking such risky journeys, they undertake huge risks to their lives, and many a times these refugees lose their lifetime belongings, with many of them dying en route before reaching those European shores. Yet they undertake these journeys in search of good fortunes and a better life, economic prosperity, security, and upward social mobility for themselves as well as for their coming generations. However, European and Western countries' discriminatory policies towards the Muslim immigrants denies them integration into the societies or to grant them equal opportunity rights. So they undergo racial profiling, as well as their citizenry rights are also denied to them on one pretext or another. And their religious practices are looked down upon. Segregating these communities, the immigrants are forced to live in slum areas or ghettos. I was reading a report in Foreign Policy the other day on a major fire that took place in a refugee camp in Greece. And I wish to quote a few words from the report, which was titled, Europe's Failed Migration Policy Caused Greece's Latest Refugee Crisis. It was written by Andrew Connelly, and it was published in Foreign Policy on September 20th, 2020. You may search it. So it says and I quote, it says, on September 9, 2020, Europe's largest refugee camp, Moria, on the Greek island of Lesbos, burned to the ground, leaving nearly 13,000 people frightened and homeless. But to call Moria a refugee camp is an insult to most well-run refugee camps around the world that do not burn down with such predictable regularity. that this incinerated ghetto was the cornerstone of EU migration policy should prompt an urgent and expansive rethink of how to humanely manage a phenomena that will continue to grow as new conflicts rage and economies collapse. The report continues castigating the European Union by stating, before its destruction, Moria had become the kind of a hellhole that someone would want to claim asylum from rather than a place to dump asylum seekers. Unquote. So the fifth cause, ladies and gentlemen, contributing towards Islamic radicalism is primarily an outcome of internal dichotomies, conflicts, and paradoxes in the Muslim world. Islamic countries' internal feuds and a constant tug of war have flared up violence. Sometimes it is hard to decide, ladies and gentlemen, whether the world of Islam should fear itself more or its enemies. The 1400-year-old political conflict that has haunted the Muslim world in the shape of Shia-Sunni schism has never gives any respite to the Muslim world. So thus the Islamic world remains at war with itself. The 7th century's Shia-Sunni feud has meanwhile metastasized into a Wahhabi-Sunni as well as a Deobandi-Barelvi power struggle. Wahhabis or Ahle Hadith, Deobandis, Barelvis, Hanafis, Malikis, etc., ladies and gentlemen, remain part of Islam's subsects according to their juridical schools of thought. So declared as Rafida, very important to note, declared as Rafida or the rejectors of faith, the Shias takfir or apostatization or targeted killings remains sanctioned under the Radde Rafawi's fatwas of Islamic scholar Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi. According to Khalid Ahmad, who I am quoting from his excellent scholarship, Sectarian War, Pakistan's Sunni Shia Violence and its Links to the Middle East, Oxford University Press, 2011. I am quoting from pages 3, 82, 83, 88, 92, 105, 128, 136, and 138. So this repudiation of the rejectionists' fatwa or religious edict has also been confirmed or seconded by eminent Deobandi seminaries in India and Pakistan in 1986. Moreover, Wali Nasr documents in another brilliant scholarship titled The Shia Revival, How Conflicts Within Islam will Shape the Future. Norton, 2007, page 34. So that dispute, Shia's accounting for 10 to 15% of the total Muslim population in the Islamic heartland, from Lebanon to Pakistan, there are roughly as many Shias as Sunnis, with some 80% living in the geostrategically sensitive rim of the Persian Gulf. However, a 2012 Pew survey of 39 Muslim countries, ladies and gentlemen, found at least 40% of Sunnis do not accept Shias as fellow Muslims. So thus, the Salafi jihadists find the takfir or killings of Shias as legitimate and justified under their faith. Unsurprisingly, Pakistan, which has remained a sectarian battleground, having 148 sectarian organizations, according to this book, A to Z of Jihadist Organizations in Pakistan by Muhammad Amir Rana, an excellent scholarship. And Pakistan's second largest population after Iran saw heightened Shia-Sunni violence in year 2013, in which 687 were killed and 1,319 people got injured in a total of 220 sectarian attacks. So I'm quoting these figures, ladies and gentlemen, from the annual report of Pakistan Institute of Peace Studies, annual report 2015. It must be lying somewhere here. So in their quest for regional dominance and to become paterfamilias or the guardians of the religion, both Saudi Arabia and Iran have not only been tarnishing the image of Islam worldwide, but have also pitted innocent Muslims against their fellow believers. Saudi Arabia's Wahhabism has not only distorted the largely followed Sunni rituals through its extreme Salafist practices, but also brought the hardline Deobandi into conflict with the mystic and soft Barelvis, resulting in frequent bombings or in the suicide attacks at Sufi or saints' shrines in Iraq as well as Pakistan, by denouncing them as being un-Islamic. So I'll explain Wahhabism and Salafism in the coming sections to you. So, so the sixth root cause is the factionalization and fragmentation among various subsects, which I mentioned earlier, and their juridical disciplines, such as the 4 Sunni schools of jurisprudence and at least 12 Shiite imamate, with each one of them claiming to be the most pious, the most purest, and the most genuine version of Islam. So the seventh factor, ladies and gentlemen, or the root cause, if you will, that stirs radical ideology among a group of Muslims remains the desire of puritanical glory of the faith in its original or unvarnished form, as had been practiced during the days of Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. So the eighth cause remains the pursuit of political agendas in the garb of 5 versions of political Islam. I will deliberate upon this subject separately under pan-Islamist drift and political and militant Islam, which began in the Muslim world after the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire in 1922. So the ninth root cause, ladies and gentlemen, to me is the violence in Islam in the contemporary era. Very important to note, violence in Islam in the contemporary era. And when I say contemporary era, I mean the period after the end of the Ottoman Empire, because it was after the First World War, because it was that time when many Arab states were artificially created. I told you in the introductory part that straight lines were made through Sykes-Picot Accord of May 1916 by the Western powers, Great Britain and France, and these autocratic rulers and unrepresentative kings and monarchs were imposed on the Arab people in the Middle East. The Palestine issue also became the bone of contention after the end of the Second World War and has kept the Muslim world at boil in a perpetual cycle of violence and conflict since 1948, when the State of Israel was created. Also, the Shia-Sunni feud in the Muslim world became more pronounced in this contemporary violence era. So this violence of the 20th century has been taken to new heights and given new dimensions by the militant jihadists, who are extremists and radicals in their ideology and mindset, with a convoluted religious ideology, their extremist philosophy, their barbaric methodology, and their larger-than-life worldview. So they are pulling punches above their weight. So while we will discuss the role of the West in the evolution of Islamic violence and jihad at a greater length in the subsequent episodes, Please note that the so-called threat of radical Islam never existed before 9/11 attacks. While many people in the Muslim world raise questions on the veracity of the 9/11 attacks, I will not get into that debate because I don't believe in that conspiracy theory. So, however, please bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that even during the times that when the Middle East saw intra-Arab wars as well as wars against Israel, and when the militant organizations like Muslim Brotherhood and Palestine Liberation Organization, or what was called the PLO, unleashed a reign of terror in the shape of hijackings of commercial airliners and a string of assassinations in Egypt and other countries, no one blamed it on the religion of Islam. So the question is, why now? Anyway, our modern day militant ideologues who erroneously believe to be the sole saviors of the faith also believe that the past Muslim victories were God's favor, bestowed to the righteous who followed the divine path as ordained in the religion. Whereas the later subjugation of contemporary Muslim rulers to their imperial masters and the deviation of the ordinary Muslims from the virtuous path of true or puritanical Islam resulted from abandoning the divine path. So violence in Islam I wish to discuss, but as I said, violence is not new phenomenon. Excuse me. Violence is not a new phenomenon in the Islamic faith. You will learn that militant organizations like Muslim Brotherhood, which was founded in Egypt in 1928, the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was founded in 1964, and which had morphed into Islamic Jihad movement in Palestine in 1981. All these militant Muslim organizations carrying political agendas, ladies and gentlemen, have been regularly carrying out a string of political assassinations, hijackings of planes, bombings of sites, and killings of US Marines and Israeli Olympic athletes. The US Marine bombings, ladies and gentlemen, took place on October 23rd, 1983, when 241 US service personnel, including 220 Marines and 21 other service personnel, were killed by a truck bomb at a Marine compound in Beirut in Lebanon. So simultaneous to the attack, the Marine at the Marine barracks, a suicide bomber drove a pickup truck full of explosives and crashed it into the building housing French paratroopers, approximately killing 58 French soldiers in that attack. The Beirut bombing was traced to Hezbollah, a militant and political group linked to Iran, and which had been the Hezbollah had been created or originated in Lebanon in 1982. So Iranian and Syrian governments' backing was suspected in that Beirut bombing attack, but it could not be proved. And now, if you connect it to what I told you about the proxies or non-state actors in the overview episodes, you would know that how the states have been using these proxies for their own geopolitical aims and objectives. So likewise, the Israeli athletes attack, which I just mentioned, is called the Munich massacre. It was an attack that took place during the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich in the West Germany by 8 members of a Palestinian terrorist group called the Black September. Black September, ladies and gentlemen, is another very unfortunate story of Palestinian massacre that took place in Jordan from September 16th to 27 in 1970. By the Jordanian army, this massacre was carried out by the Jordanian army, which had been supported by a brigade of Pakistan Army under King Hussein of Jordan. And So I was saying that this Munich massacre, first the Black September group took 9 members of the Israeli Olympic team hostage by killing 2 of them. Later, all the athletes were killed, as well as a German police officer was also killed in the attack. So similarly, the Shia-Sunni killings, as I was mentioning, that began in Pakistan after the Iranian Revolution. Now, remember, we are talking about the contemporary era violence in Islam. So the Shia-Sunni killings that began in Pakistan after the Iranian Revolution of 1979 and the Iraq-Iran war continues to claim innocent Muslim lives. Iraq-Iran war from 1980 to 1988, for 8 years it was fought. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is another about when we talk about the Shia-Sunni feud in Pakistan. It's another very unfortunate story that how that Pakistani brigade commander who was involved in the Black September massacre of Palestinians, he later became the president of Pakistan, and his name is remembered as General Ziaul Haq, General Muhammad Ziaul Haq. And it's a long story how he created several violent Sunni and Wahhabi sectarian groups at the behest of some Middle Eastern kingdom, and those have been involved in the brutal killing of innocent Shias, in Pakistan. And this had been they had been called as Sipai Sahaba and Lashkar-e Jhangvi, and so many other names. This has all been written in this excellent book by Khalid Ahmed. So Iran-Iraq war, as I said, it should be seen as another Saudi-Iranian conflict, because in Arab Iraq under President Saddam Hussein received full support and backing from the United States as well as Saudi Arabia. The war that began on September 22nd, 1980 lasted for full 8 years and ended in a stalemate on August 20th, 1988. So other politico-religious organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami in Indonesia and Bangladesh as well, but remained involved in political killings as well, but not at the world stage, but only domestically. So importantly, the Mecca siege that took place in November 1979, and that had been led by a gentleman called Juhayman al-Utaybi. Juhayman al-Utaybi, it had further demonstrated an undercurrent to get rid of the Arab rulers and who were running oppressive regimes. So Utaybi's Sabah Rasail, or his 7 letters published in 1978, in those letters he had called upon the true believers to invite the people to join Islam. The letters also instructed its members to organize them, who joined them, organize their ranks, and then migrate to a secure base to launch a movement for Islam's domination. It was quite similar to the approach that had been taken by Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, when he carried out migration from Mecca to Medina for the protection of the religion as well as for the safety of his followers from migration. So the hijrat, or the migration that is commonly remembered, took place, completed on September 24, 622 AD. So anyway, success in the Afghan Jihad, ladies and gentlemen, against the Soviet Union, as I mentioned to you earlier, further emboldened these jihadists and cemented an idea of global Islam among them. So remember, everything is coming from the violence of the contemporary era. So in his initial teachings by Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden's mentor and founding member named Abdullah Yusuf Azam. Abdullah Yusuf Azam was the mentor and founding fathers of Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. So he was a Palestinian Sunni scholar. He classified the enemy into two categories: the near enemy and the far enemy. For Al-Qaeda, the near enemy were the Islamic rulers who were believed to have gone astray from the divine path by becoming the lapdogs of imperial masters. So then that means that the Muslim rulers had become infidels. Thus, they were liable to khuruj and takfir. I will discuss both these elements separately, ladies and gentlemen, when we reach to the Al-Qaeda's philosophy. But briefly, khuruj basically means expulsion from the fold of Islam. And takfir means apostatization. In Islam, anybody who willfully renounces his faith or religion is considered to have committed apostasy and is liable to be killed for the preservation of the integrity and sanctity of the religion. So takfir is connected to that. The far enemy of Al-Qaeda's philosophy, on the other hand, as evident from the term, remained a reference to the Western world. So let me wind it up, my segment B, ladies and gentlemen, of our discussion on root causes that leads to religious terrorism. So far, I have given you 9 root causes. I will return with segment C shortly, and then we'll connect from it, and then I will give you my own conclusion. So thank you very much for listening so far. Hope it's making some sense to you. So this is Adnan Qaiser signing off from our part 6 of discussion on Islamic radicalism. Take good care and bye for now.